Nobody
This is
asked where she
completely
came from,
unacceptable.
but the silence
What kind
when
of
she entered a
service is
room
this?
said they had already decided. May Carter stood at the edge of the dining floor, just past the glow of the Edison bulbs, where the soft clink of steak knives played over the low hum of expensive jazz. The waitstaff floated through the room in crisp black like ghosts with name tags. May wore the same uniform, but it clung to her body like borrowed skin. Outside, the wind cut through East Chicago like a rusted blade. Inside, the air reeked of rosemary butter, dry-aged sirloin, and unspoken judgment. She had been at Grayson's Prime for just under 4 weeks, long enough to learn how not to be noticed. That was how she survived most places. She poured water quietly, smiled politely, kept her words clipped and inoffensive. Tonight, that silence cracked. Dorian Grayson himself, owner, son of the founder, a man whose handshake had once graced the front page of Forbes Midwest, was hosting someone at table 4. Everyone knew what that meant. No mistakes, no delay, no noise. It was the kind of table where tips did not matter. Only perfection did. May had the table. Dorian cornered her near the linen closet, all blazer and breath mints, his tone low but sharp. "That's Roger Talmadge. You screw this up, May, and I swear—" "You'll fire me," she said quietly. "I know." He blinked. "Then you also know to say yes, sir." She did not answer. She just walked away. Roger Talmadge was old money royalty in Indiana, a real estate baron, land developer, political donor. He sat with a woman half his age and half his interest. She fiddled with her phone as he examined the steak menu like it was a contract. May approached with practiced calm. "Good evening. May I—" "Water," he said, eyes never lifting. "No ice, 2 lemon slices, and make sure it's Evian, not the tap you poured for that woman last week." The woman flinched, just barely. May didn't. "Yes, sir," she said. She moved like a whisper, not because she was meek, but because she had learned. Softness was armor. Too strong, and men like him cracked it with condescension. Too quiet, and they ignored her. She had to live in between. May poured the water slowly, counting each drop like seconds. The pitcher caught the light, refracting the gold glow of the chandelier across the rim of his glass. Then it happened. The busboy, new, young, and too fast, brushed past her elbow as she stepped away. The pitcher jerked. A stream of water sloshed. It struck the side of the table, skimming the edge of Talmadge's sleeve, then soaking into the imported linen tablecloth. Silence. May froze, eyes on the stain blooming between the salt cellar and the wine glass. Roger Talmadge looked up. He did not shout. That would have been too crude for a man like him. Instead, he smiled. Thin. Surgical. "Would you look at that?" he said, holding his arm away from his body as if her presence were a contaminant. "I asked for competence. I received community college." The busboy vanished. "I'm sorry, sir," May said, voice low. "Let me—" "No," he interrupted. "Let me." He dabbed his sleeve once with a napkin, then set it down with precise contempt. He studied her face. "Young woman, how old are you?" 29, she said. "Still a waitress at 29? Let me guess. Single mother, 2 jobs, some night school degree in, what, social work?" May held still. "Tell me, Miss Carter. Do you believe effort is the same as value?" "I believe respect is earned," she said. "Not dictated." The girl across from him looked up, surprised. Talmadge blinked, then laughed once, soft and cruel. "Well," he said, leaning back in his chair, "you just earned your walk out the door." He gestured toward the manager's office. Dorian was already striding over, his jaw clenched. "May," he hissed. "Now." She did not move. "I did the job," she said. "I made one mistake. I apologized. He chose to humiliate me." "He's a donor to half the city," Dorian spat. "You think that makes you right?" "No," she said. "But it does not make me wrong." That was when the room noticed her. Not because of the water or the voice, but the stillness. She stood unbowed, hands at her sides, chin lifted just slightly, like someone remembering who she used to be. "I served this restaurant well," she said, "and I'll leave with my dignity intact." She unpinned her name tag, set it gently on the white tablecloth beside the water stain, and walked away. No door slammed, no applause followed. But in the lull of returning chatter, one older black man at the bar nodded once, barely perceptible. May stepped out into the cold. Her breath steamed against the wind. Behind her, the lights of Grayson's flickered through the glass. In front of her, steel-gray clouds folded across the sky like old wounds. She did not cry, not yet. But as she turned the corner onto Kingman Avenue, she felt it, the weight of her daughter's prescriptions in her coat pocket, the second eviction notice taped to her fridge, the echo of Talmadge's voice. Still a waitress at 29. Not anymore. At a red light, she paused, pulled out her phone. Scrolled to a name in her contacts she had saved months ago and never called. Raina Holloway, legal aid, employment justice. She stared at it for a long moment, then tapped. A voice answered. "This is Raina." May said nothing at first, then simply, "I think I have a case." The light changed. May crossed the street, and behind her, the city shifted. May had not been inside a law office since the custody hearing 6 years ago. That time, the chairs were too cold, and the lawyer wore a suit that smelled like mothballs and stale coffee. This time, it was different. The office of Raina Holloway Legal Aid and Advocacy was wedged between a bail bond storefront and a pawn shop that used to be a Blockbuster. Faded posters in the window promised justice for workers. Behind the desk sat a young man in rolled-up sleeves and a lavender tie. His name tag read, Jordan Intake. His smile was tired, but real. "Miss Carter," he said, "Raina will be right with you." May nodded, keeping her hands in her coat pockets. They still felt wet from the pitcher the night before, though she'd washed them 3 times since. Her back ached from a night spent on the couch, the bedroom given to her daughter, Lena, who had thrown up twice in her sleep. A stomach bug, maybe. Or maybe just nerves. Kids knew more than adults ever told them. A door opened. Raina Holloway stepped out. She wasn't what May expected. No stern suits or pearl necklaces, just a dark turtleneck, gold hoops, and eyes like sharpened glass. Her afro framed her face like a crown. She looked more poet than attorney, until she spoke. "May Carter," she said. "Come in. Close the door behind you." The office was narrow and windowless, lined with bulging folders and yellowing case files. Raina motioned to the seat across from her. May sat. The chair creaked. "Start at the moment you were assigned that table," Raina said. "Tell me everything." May recounted it in low, measured tones. No embellishments, no trembling voice, just facts. The water, the comment, the silence that followed, and the walk. When she finished, Raina was quiet for a full 10 seconds. Then she leaned back in her chair. "I've read about Talmadge," she said. "Big money, bigger ego, owns half the construction permits between here and Terre Haute." May nodded. "And a reputation." Raina's lips twisted. Half a smile, half a grimace. "Men like that don't make reputations. They buy silence." May swallowed. "So what can I do?" "You were fired in front of witnesses, in direct response to pushing back on verbal abuse," Raina said, already scribbling. "If we can prove that, especially with a pattern from management, We have a viable claim for wrongful termination and retaliation. May's fingers curled in her lap. I don't want money. Good, Raina said, because they'll assume that's what this is. We'll use that. May looked down at her coat, at the faint water ring still visible near the cuff. He said I was invisible. Raina looked up. Not anymore. There was a knock. Jordan poked his head in. Sorry to interrupt. There's a reporter on the line asking about the case. May stiffened. Already? Raina's brow lifted. What outlet? Public Insight Network. Wants a statement. Raina turned to May. Your call. If you speak, it goes public. If not, it stays quiet for now. May stared at the floor. Her mind flicked to the waitstaff. Carlos, Janine, even the busboy with panicked eyes. They were still there, still invisible. She looked back at Raina. Let them hear it, May said. Let them all hear it. By the time the article went live 2 days later, the headline was already spreading through every group chat in the downtown service industry. Waitress fired after calling out abuse from power broker Roger Talmadge. The piece did not name the restaurant, yet, but everyone knew. The details were specific. Table 4, Evian water, a white tablecloth stained with power. May didn't read the comments, but she saw the fallout. Grayson's Prime suspended all front-of-house operations pending internal review. Dorian made a statement about training and professional expectations. Talmadge called the piece slanderous, then had his lawyer send a letter to Raina's office threatening defamation charges. Raina laughed when she read it. Defamation requires it not to be true, she said. He knows that. This is a bluff. But the real shift came 3 nights later. A knock at May's apartment door. She opened it to find Carlos, the senior server. Early 40s, always polite, always tired. His eyes darted down the hallway before he stepped inside. They're hiding stuff, he said. Tips, hours, schedule changes logged after the fact. Janine's been clocked out while still working double shifts. I've got screenshots, logs, pay stubs. You want them? May blinked. You're not scared? Course I'm scared, Carlos said. But watching you stand there in front of Talmadge, I realized something. We all keep waiting for someone to say it first. You already did. He handed her a flash drive. I'm in, he said. Whatever you need. Raina met her at the legal aid office the next morning with news. They're lawyering up, she said. Prescott and Manning, big firm, old money. May folded her arms. They'll try to drown us in paper. They will, Raina agreed. But paper leaves trails, especially dirty paper. She gestured toward Carlos's flash drive. With this, she said, we can open a formal complaint with the labor board. That gets us discovery rights, pay records, emails, security logs. Every drop of ink Grayson spilled will be evidence. May sat down, hard. It's happening. It is. A long pause. Will it matter? May asked. In the end? Raina smiled, but it wasn't kind. It was the kind of smile forged in battles most people never saw. You were told your silence was your only currency, she said. That visibility was dangerous. But when people like you speak up, May, you don't just break silence. You break the spell. May nodded. Outside, the city moved like a slow machine. But inside, something had begun to stir, like gears shifting, like old systems remembering they could fall apart. And May Carter, the woman who was told she'd always be invisible, had just taken her first step into view. The legal notice hit Grayson's Prime like a hammer wrapped in velvet. Filed under Carter v. Grayson's Prime, LLC, the claim alleged wrongful termination, hostile work environment, and violation of the state's Equal Dignity in Employment statute. It was concise, unemotional. The kind of language that sounded harmless to the untrained ear, until you realized it was a fuse. Dorian Grayson read it twice, then poured 3 fingers of bourbon at 11 in the morning. His office, usually kept at a museum-grade chill, now reeked of sweat and desperation. He made 2 calls, one to Prescott and Manning, the other to Roger Talmadge. Talmadge did not answer. He had already issued a press statement dismissing the article as character assassination by a disgruntled former employee with a political agenda. Dorian stared at his phone like it had betrayed him. He didn't care about politics. He cared about margins. The moment he hung up, the phone buzzed again. This time it was Janine, lead hostess. "She's not alone anymore," Janine said. "People are talking. Servers. Line cooks. Even Hector from payroll." Dorian's hand twitched. "Tell them if anyone leaks company information, they're gone." "Some of them want to be gone," Janine said quietly. "And they're bringing receipts." He slammed the phone down. The sound echoed. Out in the kitchen, Carlos moved with quiet efficiency. He no longer wore the fear May once did. That was gone now, replaced by something steadier, a purpose, newly lit. At the legal aid clinic, Raina Holloway called it Phase 2. "We now have Carlos's digital records. That's our opening salvo," she said. "But we're going deeper." She pointed to the corkboard behind her desk. Names, arrows, photocopied timesheets, a constellation of people who had worked at Grayson's over the past 5 years. "If we can find a pattern of wage misreporting, we upgrade this to a class action." May sat at the edge of her chair, fingers laced tightly in her lap. "They'll come after us harder." "They already are." Raina opened her email inbox. She turned the screen toward May. It was a cease and desist. The language was familiar, polished, threatening in its calm. "Your client's claims constitute deliberate misrepresentation. Any further statements will be considered defamation per se and litigated accordingly." May stared at the words. Her chest tightened. "They want me scared." "They want you gone," Raina said. "But here's the thing about the powerful. They always overreach. Their arrogance is our blueprint." Meanwhile, in a corner office 3 floors above the city, Cliff Prescott leaned back in his leather chair, flipping through the complaint. "You let this get too far," he told Dorian over speakerphone. "A waitress. Jesus. Dorian." "She wasn't supposed to talk," Dorian snapped. "And now half the staff thinks she's Joan of Arc." "Then it's time we light the fire," Prescott said coolly. He turned to his associate, a young woman named Evelyn Cho with a mind like a scalpel. "Counterclaim," he said. "File it by Friday." "Grounds?" Evelyn asked. "Interference, defamation, breach of confidentiality, if we have a clause." She was never under NDA. "Find another angle," Prescott said. "Make it sting." He leaned back, hands behind his head, smiling. "We'll bury her in paper and cost." "She'll run out of steam." May was running out of sleep. Every night after Lena went to bed, May sat at the chipped kitchen table with a legal pad and a stack of memories. She wrote down every shift, every snide comment from Dorian, every pay stub that looked off. She remembered it all. That was the thing about being invisible. When no one thinks you're listening, you learn to memorize everything. Her handwriting was neat, almost too neat. She had learned it young, in the group home, where silence was misread as defiance and perfect posture earned her another week without punishment. That same steel ran through her now, but under it, fear pulsed. She was risking everything, not just for herself, for Carlos, for Janine, for the kid working dishes who hadn't spoken a word since day 1, and for Lena. She looked into the bedroom where her daughter slept, face soft with dreams. The hum of the humidifier filled the silence. It smelled faintly of Vicks and lemon balm. May closed the notebook and whispered to no one. "It has to be worth it." It was worth it, at least until the call came. Raina stepped into the hallway of the clinic with a phone pressed tight to her ear. When she returned, her face was a still pond. No ripples, just tension. "We've been hit with a preemptive countersuit," she said. "They're claiming reputational harm and intentional infliction of economic damage." May's stomach dropped. "They're saying I cost him business?" Raina nodded. "We expected this. We'll file an anti-SLAPP motion to strike it down." "But if it goes through?" "Then we countersue harder and subpoena every record they try to hide." May nodded, swallowing back panic. Raina saw it. She leaned in. "You okay?" "No," May said, "but I'm not leaving." Later that night, as May walked home, a black SUV idled outside her apartment building, unmarked, engine humming low. She paused, watched it, then kept walking. It drove off slowly, like it wanted to be noticed. The next morning, a letter arrived in her mailbox. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of heavy cream paper. "It's not too late to walk away. Some fights are unwinnable. Ask around." May stared at the note, then tore it in half. She did not throw it away. She kept the pieces, pinned them to her fridge. A reminder, not of fear, of pressure, and what pressure could make. By Friday, Raina had filed a motion to strike the countersuit under state anti-retaliation laws. She included Carlos's declaration, Jeanine's corroboration, 3 signed affidavits from former employees, and a request for preservation of all payroll records, internal communications, and security footage from the week May was terminated. It was a war now. But May no longer walked like someone afraid of war. She walked like someone who had already survived one. And now, she was building her own battlefield. One receipt, one name, one truth at a time. The basement smelled like mildew, toner, and bureaucracy. It was not a place for justice. It was where records went to be forgotten. But May Carter stood at the edge of the municipal archives room anyway, her coat still damp from the sleet, hands clenched in her pockets. Raina had sent her with one purpose: find the names, the off-books ones. She was not alone. Across the table sat Bethany Roth, a part-time assistant clerk with 2 kids in elementary school and a father in hospice care. She wore the kind of exhaustion that could not be faked. "I don't know what I'm allowed to show you," Bethany said, shifting in her seat. May placed a folded sheet of paper on the table, a notarized subpoena, Raina's signature at the bottom. "Then don't show me," May said. "Just point." Bethany hesitated, then slid a binder toward her. "Payroll variance reports. Grayson's Prime has filed amended hours 5 times in the last 3 years. That's rare for a place their size. Usually means back pay or cover-up." May flipped the pages. Hour columns, tipped wage boxes, deductions. Then, at the bottom of a 2021 report, she saw it. A line item marked Security Adjustment, External. It was listed under non-staff expenditures, twice. Both times during weeks where former employees had filed minor complaints. "What's this?" May asked. Bethany leaned over. "I'm not supposed to say, but I've seen it before. It's a code some businesses use when they hire off-duty cops as private conflict consultants. It means hush money or intimidation. Legal, if unofficial. Keeps staff from escalating complaints." May's stomach turned. "You're saying they paid officers to silence people?" "I'm saying they used public uniforms for private cleanup," Bethany replied, voice low. "And no one looked too closely. Because men like Roger Talmadge make a few phone calls, and everyone starts looking somewhere else." May closed the binder. Her hands trembled. Outside, snow began to fall, thin, lacy flakes, like ash. Back at the clinic, Raina ran her finger down the scan May had brought in. You realize what this means, she said. It means we weren't just underpaid, May replied. We were watched, threatened, maybe worse. Raina nodded slowly. This isn't just a civil labor case anymore. This is potential misuse of municipal contracts, possible illegal coercion of employees. If we can prove officers were used to suppress internal disputes, then it's not just Talmadge, May said. It's the city. The silence that followed was thick. Finally, Raina said, We need to find someone who took the money. They found him in a bar on the south side, just past midnight. Officer Dale Rucker, retired 2 years ago, still wore his department watch like it was a badge. He was balding, red-faced, and 2 bourbons into a Friday night when Raina approached his booth. He recognized her before she spoke. You're the lawyer causing all this trouble. She slid into the booth across from him. May stayed at the bar. I'm just here for the truth. Rucker laughed bitterly. That'll cost you more than you got. You were listed as external security on Grayson's expense sheet, Raina said, sliding a photo across the table. Same week, 2 female employees quit without notice. Rucker went quiet. Raina leaned forward. I'm not threatening you, officer. I'm giving you a chance to speak before someone else makes you a scapegoat. He stared at the photo, then muttered, They told me it was a harassment complaint, said the girl made it up, said she was looking for a payout. What did you do? I sat her down, off hours, in uniform, told her how bad things could get for a girl who lies to HR, told her the law only protects people who follow the rules. And she left. Rucker nodded. Didn't even come back for her last check. Raina's voice dropped to a whisper. And did you believe she was lying? He looked away. Doesn't matter what I believed. It does now. He drained his glass. Then slowly reached into his coat pocket and handed Raina a USB drive. I kept records, in case someone ever asked the right question. 2 days later, Raina called May into her office. They've filed a motion to dismiss our retaliation claim, she said. But they don't know we have this. She slid the USB into her laptop. On screen, 4 memos, 2 audio files, 1 scanned invoice marked private security detail. Contract completion. In the audio, a voice clearly identified as Dorian Grayson could be heard instructing Rucker to handle a complaint discreetly and warning that if another story makes it out, we all go under. May listened in silence. When the recording ended, she asked, What happens next? Raina looked her dead in the eyes. We go public. The press conference was held in the basement of New Light Baptist Church, under a leaky fluorescent bulb and a peeling portrait of Dr. King. 5 microphones on a folding table, 50 chairs, local reporters, bloggers, community organizers. May stood to the side as Raina addressed the crowd. Systemic injustice doesn't always scream, she said into the mic. Sometimes it whispers. It appears on a timesheet, a closed-door meeting, a silent resignation. She gestured to May. This woman was told her silence was the price of survival. She chose to speak anyway. The flashbulbs hit May like heat. She didn't smile. She just stood tall. And the city, for the first time, began to look her way. That night, as she put Lena to bed, the little girl whispered, Did you win today, Mama? May thought about it. About the girl who left without her paycheck. About the men who got paid to keep truth quiet. About the officers, the ledgers, the stain on table 4. I don't know yet, May said softly. But I didn't run. Lena nodded, already drifting. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was where winning began. The news cycle spun faster than May Carter could follow. By Tuesday morning, WBBM Radio, the Tribune, and 2 national legal blogs had picked up the story. Not the restaurant lawsuit. That was already old news. What caught fire was the voice recording. Handle it quietly. We all go under. Grayson's voice had texture, slick with money, but brittle with fear. It was the kind of clip that hit nerves. Every server, barback, housekeeper, and temp worker who ever swallowed abuse to keep their shift recognized its rhythm. May saw her name on a chyron for the first time. Whistleblower May Carter, a service worker's stand against power. She didn't recognize the woman in the photo they used. Her expression was serious, tired, but upright, like someone waiting to see if the storm she summoned would arrive. It did. The first sign came on Wednesday. A letter arrived under her apartment door. Plain envelope, no return address. Inside was a printed screenshot, her booking record from Cook County, dated 6 years earlier. Criminal trespass, misdemeanor, dropped. She remembered the night. Her ex, drunk. Her daughter, still a baby. She had broken back into the apartment to get Lena's formula and birth certificate. The landlord called it trespassing. The charge never stuck, but the record remained. She turned the paper over. On the back, written in Sharpie, "Want this on Channel 5?" May sat down on the floor. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from knowing this was only the beginning. At the clinic, Raina read the threat without blinking. "They're probing," she said, "testing what you'll do when they drag the dirt." "It's real dirt," May said. "I did it." "And why did you do it?" May was silent. Raina leaned forward. "If we try to outpure the enemy, we already lost. You're not a martyr. You're a woman who did what she had to. That's the story." May exhaled slowly. "I'm scared for my daughter." "I know," Raina said, "but fear is part of the price. Courage is paying it anyway." She paused. "May, we've had confirmation. Talmadge knew about the off-book payments. We've traced signatures. This doesn't end with Grayson." May's throat tightened. "It never did." That afternoon, an anonymous former assistant to Roger Talmadge sent Raina's office a digital folder labeled Grayfire. Inside were emails, dozens of them, detailing how Talmadge had provided introductions between Dorian Grayson and City Councilman Raymond Bixby, who had facilitated permit approvals for Grayson's second location. In return, Talmadge received preferential investment access on a lakefront real estate deal. It was political currency, and it came at the cost of silence. In one email, Bixby responded to Talmadge, "Tell your guy to keep the staff quiet. I'm not covering for another payout." May read it twice. "This isn't corruption at the edges," she said. "This is the blueprint." Raina looked tired. "It is. And now we have to decide. Do we keep our case narrow? Win the labor fight? Settle? Walk away? Or do we go after the whole machine?" May thought of Lena, of the couch she slept on, the extra shifts Carlos still picked up, the busboy whose name she still didn't know. She looked up. "We go after the machine." They filed a motion to expand the scope of discovery. Instead of just payroll and security records, they now requested communications between Grayson's Prime and any city officials involved in licensing, zoning, or law enforcement liaison roles. The city pushed back immediately. Prescott and Manning filed a countersuit for exceeding jurisdiction, demanding the case be thrown out entirely. But Raina anticipated it. She filed a RICO predicate brief. The move stunned the defense. They had expected a labor lawyer. What they got was a systems strategist. "You're escalating," Cliff Prescott growled into the phone. Raina's reply was quiet. "Your clients already did. We're just bringing a flashlight." That week, May began to notice small things. A man she didn't recognize sitting outside the clinic in a parked gray sedan. 2 hang-up calls to her prepaid phone after midnight. A group of men laughing too loud behind her at the grocery store, one of them whispering her name just loud enough to hear. They weren't threats. They were signals. Retaliation doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whistles behind you as you walk alone. Still, she walked. And every day, more people joined her. Janine gave a full affidavit. Carlos provided screenshots of Dorian's text messages about silencing the bleeding hearts. Even Hector from payroll, who once kept his head down so low you'd think he was asleep, walked into the legal clinic and placed a flash drive on Reina's desk without saying a word. When Reina opened it, she gasped. Shift edits, time card overrides, wage logs marked AJ for policy. May stood behind her. What does that mean? It means we've got them, Reina whispered. But just as the case was building momentum, the real blow came from above. Late Thursday afternoon, a call came from the county superior clerk's office. The trial judge had been reassigned. The new judge? Clifton R. Ellsworth, known donor to Talmadge PACs, appointed under Bixby's committee recommendation, a man whose rulings in labor cases had historically favored employers 91% of the time. May listened to Reina explain the change, then sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she said, "They're not trying to win. They're trying to outlast us." Reina nodded. "They want you tired, alone, broke." May looked out the clinic window, where winter pressed hard against the glass. "Then they better be ready to wait a long time." She stood. "I'm not leaving. Not now. Not ever." And Reina saw it, the quiet fire behind May's eyes. Not rage, not even courage. Resolve. The kind of resolve that systems don't see until it's already split their walls open. The walls of power rarely crack from the outside. They splinter from the inside when someone who once kept the secrets decides to speak. That was why May Carter sat alone in the corner booth of Patriot Diner, staring at the door. She had been waiting for 19 minutes. Her coffee was cold. Her nerves weren't. Then the door opened. Luther Nash stepped in like he was looking for a reason to walk back out. Former head of internal operations at Grayson's Prime. Black suit, frayed cuffs, eyes darting like they still remembered where the security cameras were. May stood. "Luther?" He nodded, barely. They sat in silence for the first full minute. Then May pushed a folded piece of paper across the table. It was not a subpoena, not a threat, just a note in her own handwriting. "I was quiet for years. I understand why you were too." Luther read it twice, then finally spoke. "I didn't want to come. I told myself I wouldn't, but I saw the video, the press conference. I heard the audio clip." He looked up at her. "That wasn't courage. That was war." May shook her head. "It was just truth." "No," he said. "It was truth with aim." She waited. Luther drew in a slow breath. "They used to have a rule. Never fire the same day you intimidate. Made it look retaliatory. So we waited. Always waited." He looked haunted. 4 girls, 2 line cooks, 1 server who walked out and left her shoes behind. That one stuck with me. "Did you report it?" "To who?" he asked. The city was in their pocket. HR was just code for hold and release. Every time I asked questions, they gave me bonuses. May studied him. "Why now?" "Because my daughter applied to college this year," he said. "And when she wrote her essay, she talked about speaking up, about how silence is complicity." He laughed softly. 15 years in operations. Got brought down by a personal essay. May's voice was steady. "Will you testify?" "I'll do more," he said. "I kept copies. I have the logs, the private reports, the payout list, even the one for you." May froze. "What?" Luther reached into his coat and pulled out a thin folder. 2 days after they fired you, Dorian had this drafted," he said. "A settlement fund in case you went public. They assumed you'd take the money." She opened the folder. Her name. The incident. A line item labeled $25,000. Reputation containment. Full NDA. "I wasn't supposed to see this," he said, "but I printed it anyway. I guess part of me wanted this moment to come." She looked at him. "I won't thank you," she said. "Not yet." "I'm not asking you to," he replied. "I'm just trying to balance my books before someone else does it for me." He slid out of the booth, paused. "You keep fighting, Miss Carter. Just don't forget what it'll cost you." She didn't answer. She just stared at the folder. The city had offered her a price, and now they would learn she wasn't for sale. At the clinic, Raina pored over the documents Luther delivered. Her hands moved fast, brain faster, scanning, cross-referencing, matching names to dates. Not just numbers, but patterns. Not just events, but intent. "This is it," she whispered. "This is what makes it federal." May stood at the window, watching traffic move in patterns she once mistook for freedom. "They had a payout system ready," she said, "like a crisis routine." Raina nodded. "This proves forethought, a structure. We've got coercion, fraud, witness intimidation. And with Nash's affidavit, we may be able to push this into federal labor racketeering statutes." She looked up. "You still in?" May turned. "I'm so far in I forgot where the door was." The motion was filed on a cold Monday morning. Motion to expand to federal civil court under Title 29 and RICO criteria. Within 24 hours, Talmadge's lawyers responded with fire. 2 injunctions. A public relations campaign. A countersuit threat worth 7 figures. Then came the leak. Someone, no one on Raina's team, leaked May's custody history to a gossip blog. Her ex, the restraining order, the emergency court appearance when Lena was only 3. The headline, "Activist Plaintiff Has Troubled Past." Raina called it noise. But May knew better. It was aimed at her daughter. She read the article once, then closed her laptop. That night, she did not sleep. She sat at the end of Lena's bed, watching her chest rise and fall in the dark. The city could throw its weight. It could smear, intimidate, threaten. But May knew its weakness now. It needed silence, and she wasn't giving it. By week's end, the city's silence cracked. A junior staffer from Councilman Bixby's office came forward. A woman named Sophia Amari, 28, immigrant daughter, public service idealist turned disillusioned scheduler. She showed Raina a folder of internal memos. One stood out. Carter situation. Minimize exposure. Delay court response. Avoid escalation. It was dated 3 days before the city claimed to have learned of the case. May stared at the page. "They knew," she said, "before I ever filed." Raina nodded. "They saw you coming." May met her eyes. "Then let's show them what happens when I arrive." That night, Raina gathered her team in the clinic's back room. "We're entering the end game," she said. "This will not be a trial of facts. It will be a war of perception. They'll paint her as unstable, me as radical, the staff as ungrateful. We fight with precision, with discipline. No leaks, no press slip-ups. No fear." May stepped forward. "They called me a problem." She let the word hang. "But I'm not a problem. I'm the result. Of them. Of what they built." She looked around. "Let's make sure they feel it." And in an unmarked building downtown, Roger Talmadge listened to the latest update with a face like polished stone. "They have Nash, Amari, time cards, affidavits," his lawyer reported. "We may have to talk settlement." Talmadge didn't blink. "You don't settle with a waitress," he said. "You wait her out." But deep down, for the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't felt since his first scandal. Not fear, recognition. He had underestimated the storm. On the 7th floor of the Federal Northern District Courthouse, The air felt like it had been filtered through fear. May Carter sat at the far end of the long rectangular conference table. Her back was straight. Her hands, folded in her lap, looked steady. Only the slight tension in her knuckles betrayed the pressure she was under. Across from her, Prescott and Manning's legal team whispered in clusters. 4 lawyers, 3 paralegals, 1 public relations handler pretending to take notes but really watching May like she was a flame too close to curtains. Judge Clifton R. Ellsworth would arrive in less than 10 minutes. This was not the trial. This was the pre-settlement conference, a procedural step, a technicality. But in rooms like this, wars ended, or widened. Raina Holloway sat beside May, surrounded by boxes of evidence and the kind of silence only discipline brings. She leaned over, her voice just above a breath. "You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't flinch. If they try to bait you, let me handle it." May nodded. "Is he here?" Raina glanced across the room. "Not yet." But that changed with the soft swoosh of the door. Roger Talmadge entered like someone accustomed to being waited on. Tailored coat, face like carved granite. He paused, surveying the room not with curiosity, but calculation. When he saw May, his lips curled into something that tried to resemble a smile. It failed. He took his seat across from her. She didn't look away. He did. Judge Ellsworth arrived at 10:03 a.m. He wore his robe like armor. His voice was slow, deliberate, built for rooms like this. "We are here to discuss potential settlement and case narrowing before trial." He turned to Talmadge's lead counsel. "You've reviewed the amended filings?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And?" "We believe the plaintiff's expansion into federal jurisdiction under RICO is ambitious. At best." May's jaw tightened. Raina spoke next. "We have over 70 hours of documentation, audio testimony, direct correspondence, and internal records confirming a pattern of retaliatory conduct, wage manipulation, and municipal interference. None of that is ambition. It is evidence." Ellsworth leaned back. "Let us not argue the case before we begin the case." He turned to May. "Miss Carter, you have refused multiple offers to settle." May nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." "You understand that going to trial carries risk, public exposure, personal hardship." "I do." "You may be portrayed as unstable, opportunistic." "Yes, sir." "Why continue?" May did not pause. "Because they are counting on me not to." Ellsworth held her gaze, then looked down and made a note. The session recessed at noon. In the hallway outside, Talmadge approached her. No entourage, no lawyers, just the man. "You know this ends poorly for you," he said. May turned to face him. "You don't get to define poorly anymore." He leaned in slightly. "I've seen your record, the trespass, the restraining order hearing. You have skeletons, Miss Carter. You should have taken the money." May did not blink. She remembered Raina's words. Don't outpure them. Outlast them. She stepped forward, voice quiet. "You spent your life making people like me feel disposable. But here I am, still standing." He opened his mouth to reply. She cut him off. "You don't scare me." Then she walked past him, her heels echoing off the marble like a metronome. That night, in her apartment, May found an envelope taped to her door. Inside was a single photograph. Her daughter Lena walking home from school, backpack sagging, alone. No note, no threat, just the image. She stared at it in silence, then picked up her phone. 10 minutes later, Janine, Carlos, and Raina were in her living room. No one said much. They didn't need to. The photograph sat on the table like a verdict. Raina spoke first. "This is escalation. Classic. Borderline illegal. Absolutely immoral." May looked up. Her voice was a whisper. They want me to think this is the cost. It isn't, Raina said. This is the fear tax, and we don't pay that. Janine reached across the table and took May's hand. You're not alone, she said. Carlos nodded. We're not backing down. May stared at the photo again, then slid it into a folder marked Exhibits. It goes into evidence. By the end of the week, 3 more former staffers came forward, each with their own records, altered schedules, unexplained deductions, and, most damning, a group message from Dorian himself instructing managers to bury the Carter incident by cycling new hires and burning the tape. They had tried to erase her, but the erasure had left fingerprints. Raina compiled everything into an updated discovery binder, over 280 pages. She handed a copy to opposing counsel under federal order. The PR handler's face turned pale. Meanwhile, Sophia Amari, the former aide to Councilman Bixby, had a choice to make. Federal investigators had reached out, subpoena pending. If she testified, she could lose her future in politics. If she didn't, she'd carry the weight of silence. She called May. I didn't mean to be part of it, she said. May answered gently. None of us did, but we were. Sophia took a long breath. I'll testify. Back at the courthouse, Judge Ellsworth summoned both legal teams. The court finds sufficient merit in the plaintiff's expansion under federal code. The motion to dismiss is denied. Talmadge's counsel protested. The public attention is compromising fairness. Then perhaps you should have kept it private, the judge said. May sat quietly. Her hands didn't shake. Outside, Raina leaned over. You won the first real fight. May shook her head. No, I survived the first one. The real fight starts now. That evening, the sky over the city turned a pale, burnt orange. A cold front rolled in from the lake. In her small apartment, May tucked Lena into bed. Are you scared? Her daughter asked softly. May brushed the hair from her forehead. Yes, she said. Why do you still do it? May paused. Because silence is safe, but it makes nothing better. Lena nodded, as if she understood far more than her age allowed. May sat beside her long after she fell asleep, and in that silence, she decided tomorrow they would hear her name again. But this time, it would not be whispered. It would be written. The courtroom was cold, not by temperature, but by design. Steel trim, oak benches, fluorescent light washed the color from everything, including the people. It was a room built to make emotion feel out of place. May Carter sat at the plaintiff's table. To her left, Raina Holloway scanned her notes. Her jaw was set. To her right, 3 folding chairs were occupied by the people May had once worked beside. Carlos, Janine, Luther Nash. The others would rotate through the day. Today was testimony, and May was first. State your name for the record. May Carter. Occupation? I was a server at Grayson's Prime. I now work at the Holloway Legal Aid Clinic. And what is your relationship to the defendant? They fired me. For what reason? I refused to stay quiet. There was no wobble in her voice, just air and intention. The defense attorney stood. Miss Carter, isn't it true you had a prior misdemeanor arrest? Yes. And that you lost custody? No, May cut in evenly. I temporarily lost housing. Custody was never removed. My daughter lived with my sister for 3 months until I had an apartment. All of that was reported, cleared, and closed. Raina didn't smile, but her pen paused on the page. The defense pivoted. Isn't it true you could have taken a settlement early on? I was offered money, yes. But you refused. So this, what, is about vengeance? May leaned forward slightly. "No," she said. "It's about record keeping. Yours. And mine." Silence fell. The judge recessed for 15 minutes. Outside the courtroom, Raina caught up with May. "You were perfect," she said. May looked down at her palms. "They'll still try to spin it." "Let them," Raina replied. "We have Nash, we have Sophia, we have payroll manipulation, security footage, whistleblower emails, and testimony. What they have is image." May nodded, then asked quietly, "Do you think they're sorry?" Raina paused. "Systems don't feel sorry, but people inside them might. If they can feel shame, they can be made to change." May didn't speak again, but her eyes darkened. She didn't want apologies. She wanted accountability. Inside, Luther Nash took the stand. He did not dress like a whistleblower. He dressed like an accountant at confession. He testified about the internal directives: delay terminations to hide intent, falsify hours, withhold tip payouts and refer to them as adjustments, pay officers to discourage complaints off the record. The defense tried to discredit him. They questioned his ethics. "You never came forward until now." Luther nodded. "That's correct. So you were complicit." "I was," he said. The words fell heavy. "But silence doesn't protect you. It just preserves the damage. I'm here now, because she had the courage first." He nodded toward May. "She reminded me who I used to be." In the back of the room, one of the jurors, a woman in a denim jacket, maybe a nurse, maybe a mother, wiped her eye. Sophia Amari followed. She produced memos, dates, emails from the councilman's office suggesting favors traded for silence. When asked if she feared retaliation, she answered, "I fear what happens if people like May Carter stop coming forward." The court murmured. The judge called for order, but the words hung in the air. Truth had a rhythm, and the jury was starting to tap along. Roger Talmadge took the stand under subpoena. He didn't want to. Everyone could see it. He wore an expensive suit that couldn't cover the discomfort in his shoulders. He answered every question with careful legality. No, he had no knowledge of wage manipulation. No, he did not instruct anyone to fire Miss Carter. Yes, he had expressed concern about customer experience. Yes, he considered her tone hostile. Raina stood. "Mr. Talmadge, do you recall saying to Dorian Grayson, quote, 'Fire her or I'll bury you in court and press'?" "I don't recall those exact words. But you acknowledge that you threatened financial consequences." "I expressed dissatisfaction. That is not a crime." Raina turned to the jury. "No, Mr. Talmadge, but retaliation is." He didn't answer, and for the first time since the trial began, he looked like a man no longer in control of the narrative. In closing arguments, Raina didn't speak like a lawyer. She spoke like a daughter of working people who had waited too long for justice. "You've heard about time cards and hush payments," she said. "But this case was never about paper. It was about power. The kind that assumes people like May Carter won't fight back. The kind that thinks she'll take the money and disappear." She looked at May. But she didn't. She turned back to the jury. "And now the question is not whether these men used power. The question is whether they are finally held to account for it." Then she sat down, and silence followed. Not the silence of fear, but the kind that fills a room when truth finally settles into every corner. The verdict came 2 days later. Guilty on wrongful termination, retaliation, labor violations. Guilty on willful concealment of employee wage manipulation. Guilty on suppression of whistleblower protections. The RICO charge didn't stick, but it didn't need to. Damages awarded, $2.3 million in back pay and penalties. The city opened a formal investigation into Councilman Bixby's office. Grayson's Prime was shuttered indefinitely. Roger Talmadge's face trended across news networks not as a tycoon, but as a tyrant. And May Carter? She walked out of the courthouse alone. Not because no one stood with her, but because it was her moment. And everyone else understood that. In the months that followed, she didn't give interviews. She declined a book deal. She took Raina's offer to work full-time at the clinic, building wage violation cases for people whose names would never trend. Sometimes Lena would sit beside her after school, flipping through her homework while May filled out forms for another dishwasher, another hotel maid, another silent voice ready to speak. One evening, Carlos stopped by with an envelope. Inside was a thank you card. No signature, just 2 words in block print. Still standing. May pinned it to the wall above her desk. Beside it, a framed copy of her original court filing, Carter v. Grayson's Prime, the first page of her fight, not the last, not even close.